Excuse my lying down here, but it's a rainy Sunday evening here in Nagasaki, so I'm doing what people usually do on a rainy Sunday evening. This is the second video I wanted to make about the two guitarists here of Motörhead, Phil Campbell and Würzel, Michael Burston. I tried to make this a couple of times, and it just ended up being turning into like an album history, and it just went on for too long like that. So I'll have another go at it anyway. I said Phil Campbell and Würzel, but from the start, it wasn't from the start. Well, Würzel had the nickname, but he had that nickname from the army. In fact, from school. Actually, Lemmy wasn't it? Lemmy said he had the nickname from school. Lemmy said it was a thing from Lemmy a Fiver from Hawkwind when he was in Hawkwind. Lemmy a Fiver. Apparently, had the nickname Lemmy. Something to do with him being Welsh, or they thought he was Welsh or something. I don't know why. Michael Burston was Würzel because the old children's TV show called Würzel Gummidge. It's a scarecrow coming. It's wonderful. Würzel. They asked him, an American interviewer who did a number of interviews in Motörhead. I don't know his name, but he's obviously a fan. They knew him. They were friends. He said, where'd you get the name Würzel? And Würzel describes. He goes, it's this old scarecrow, and he comes to life and fucks about. So I thought it was a pretty good description of the program. I used to watch it. Würzel Gummidge, yes, they call him Würzel with his sort of country bumpkin type manner and his straw hair and everything, but presumably got the straw hair cut because he was in the army, corporal. So I said all this in the last video, but learned the guitar from the age of 25. Anyway, winds up in Motörhead. Lemmy gives him, says keep old Latin in it, and they stick what's the two dots, the German thing? Umlaut? I don't know, how do you pronounce it? Like the Motörhead had it. They stuck them on his name, Würzel. And later on, this is something else that an American interviewer noted when he was interviewing Würzel. I think this was 94. Because Würzel says, are you seeing Wizzo tonight? He's on great eye, Phil Campbell. And the interviewer says, and I really like, yeah, when he says this, good call, mate. He says, what's this calling him Wizzo? No one said Wizzo. Why has he suddenly got his nickname Wizzo? But they said it would have been cool if you both had these nicknames from the start, Würzel and Wizzo. But, you just suddenly, Lemmy's recently stuck this nickname on. And it was true, they never could get a nickname from Würzel. In fact, I think it's the book I always quote, Lemmy Definitive Biography by Mick Wall. He said, no, it didn't matter what Lemmy called Phil Campbell, no one ever called him anything but Phil Campbell. Because there's got itchy nose again. I haven't been taking cocaine, but I was getting itchy nose on recording. But yeah, Lemmy tried unsuccessfully to stick nicknames on Phil Campbell. Was it Zoomster? Was the other in Zoom? And I think it related to him doing speed or something, yeah. But they got on very well, those two. I think I never had any bust up between them. Phil Campbell had a few problems with Phil Taylor. I mean, Phil Taylor broke his ankle, and they both fell down out of a fight, and Phil Taylor did something and broke his ankle. But that's why the two guitarists were asked to join, because Lemmy detected a relationship, is that the right word I want? A bond between them right from the start, and they were jamming together even when they meant to have this big playoff against each other. So you got the prize gig, the gig in Motörhead. They were getting on well. I think I read once that even before it was decided to take both of them on, Lemmy took them both out to a nightclub and stuff. It's a weird period. For a different story, I'd love to know. I mean, it's too late now, isn't it? They're all gone. But anyway, he said to both of them. And they pretty much, they were, Würzel said himself it was complete sort of 50-50 split solos and everything. So I go for a P there, paused it. Yeah, they're swapping solos pretty much 50-50, straight down the middle. They're writing right from the start. Phil Campbell wrote Snaggletooth, and Lemmy did lyrics, but Phil Campbell wrote the chorus Snaggletooth, and Würzel, Killed by Death, two classic Motörhead tracks off the bat, And for a while, they were really, after the Robbo tumultuous period, it really looked like they were getting somewhere. They play huge, the birthday party, 10th birthday party in 85. Still with a set list mostly from the Fast Eddie Clarke era. All those songs were definitely back in the band. Definitely back in the set list, I should say. And you can see from there, one of the biggest criticisms of the two guitar lineup was it was basically two guitars. A lot of the time it was two guitars playing exactly the same thing. They swapped solos, but especially on the classic Motörhead was no, not, I don't need that, but the glide, by which I mean, you know, the fast Eddie, Phil Taylor and Lemmy period was, it's not a great, you know, you can't do sort of what Keith Richards calls guitar weaving, like two guitars coming out of each other, like Guns N' Roses or running, or Keith Richards, you know, Rolling Stones. Two guitars sort of playing off each other and going in and out and stuff. I mean, Motörhead a lot of the time it was just overkill. It's just two guitars and a bass, Lemmy's bass, bashing away an E, which, as someone described it once, was like having tits on a bull. There were some good things. One I really liked was No Voice in the Scarf, the 1916 album. They're just playing D2E. That's a song, a brilliant song. But they played different rhythms, the guitars. That was quite interesting. And albums like A Bastards. Then they started getting in, mixing up the acoustic stuff and all this sort of thing, which for Würzel was the death knell. And Mickey D always said Würzel was more Motörhead than any of us. Würzel came out with the really biting, hard riffs, the crunchy riffs. And Würzel was being interviewed. There's a good interview from him on YouTube, but he sort of says that Phil Campbell sort of started getting into different tunings, and he wanted to do the acoustic stuff and that. And Würzel was really opposed to that. Würzel was to the marrow. He was hard rock, you know. He didn't want any of that. He said, "I will not. I don't." He said, "I do not believe in acoustic guitars in rock and roll." I think it's quite hardcore off that, and I think that really upset him. Because Lemmy said in his book, everything would seem fine, and Würzel would suddenly blow up about something. And I kind of know what, I never met, it sounds really arrogant, I don't know, but I kind of known people like Würzel. I mean, I tried, but I never made it in the band. But I met I've been in a lot of bands, and I met people like Würzel, and you think everything's fine, but they're stewing about something. Like in his case, it might be the acoustic guitar, but he was very grinny. He was like, "Let's have another beer," but it's festering, and he's suddenly blow up, and it's really hard to handle it. And I think it really shook Lemmy up, because Würzel was kind of his right hand man for like a decade. You know, they were best friends in their band. Würzel was the other. He was dancing around, and you know, Faster Clark said something kind of, it's the only thing I've got against Phil Campbell is he used to waddle around on stage. But no one could accuse well, until after Würzel left, he was sprinting all over the place. But anyway, up till then, but no one could accuse Würzel of taking it easy on stage. He was, you know, working hard to get the eye and stuff, you know, without wanting to show off at all. But I think they said Lemmy vibed off his limitless energy, planet-wide smile, and of course his fantastic playing. One thing about the difference in playing, I noticed Würzel was sometimes do the double, you know, the finger tapping, the Van Halen stuff basically. And I've never seen Phil Campbell doing that. I'm not saying he couldn't, but that was the only difference I really saw in their playing per se. They said Phil Campbell's more bluesy and stuff, but I think that's being a bit particular, and you know, but that's maybe a matter of opinion. What was I talking about? Yeah, Würzel and his. So I think it really shook Lemmy up when Würzel started having these big mood swings, and fortunately Mickey D said Wurzel's wife. Well, so quote Mickey D, and this is a quote. He said she was a bitch. Basically saying she was in Wurzel's ear, saying he was getting ripped off and stuff. And that when he left, he sent a big fax to the motor management company accusing them of stealing his income. Yeah, basically saying you're the best thing in the band and all this sort of thing. And it really shook Lemmy up, and he just said, "I was really relieved when it was over." Apparently, he always said Bastards was the album he considered it Wurzel's last album, even though Würzel played on Sacrifice, because he was there in spirit. He said Sacrifice, he just sit with his guitars across his lap. As soon as they stopped playing, he just wouldn't, and then he'd pick up again when they started. He just wouldn't push himself. He had no interest. Then he was writing songs. He wasn't even that bored about solos. Giving all to You Just Take It, Phil Campbell, sort of like that. And I think it was Out of the Sun. He was trying to do the solo for Out of the Sun, and he couldn't get it after 6 hours. He threw his guitar down, got in his car and drove off, and that was kind of it. But talking about solos, interesting. One thing I did like was Riding with the Driver. He plays that really intense solo on the Riding with the Driver on the album Orgasmatron, and they call it a mosquito solo. Possible to recreate live, but Lemmy gave him some like a black bomber or something. It's basically something to keep you up for 5 days. But Würzel took that and did this incredible solo. I can't remember quite how he did it, but I think it was an engineer said you're playing at frequencies that mosquitoes emit or something like. But that's right on the driver solo. So Würzel was out, and they said he regretted it later on. He sent messages kind of back through intermediaries asking to get back in the band. Würzel said, Mickey D said that, I think Mickey D said, because he was right at the end, Mickey D was like, he was a great guy, but when he was no good anymore. And Lemmy did his, he became a passenger. There's no room for passengers in this band and all that chat. But I remember Mickey D especially said, he was no good. We just couldn't use him. And, you make your choices. There was nothing we could do about it. They said he came to see a show at Motörhead show after he left. It was at Brixton. And he stood there and he was like really upset. So he was just in the audience. He didn't try to get backstage or anything. And they fell out for a while, but later on they made it up. And he'd get up and play some songs with them. Sadly, he really visibly aged. He looked old for his age. I mean, he died at 61. Being when he was 55, he looks, yeah. Anyway, but I think he was quite heavy on, doing this, that, and the other after he left. He tried to do some stuff. He did some ambient stuff, and he formed the band. But his days were kind of behind him, but his best days, as it were, or musical best days in Motörhead. But that left Phil Taylor, and as Phil Taylor said, after Würzel left, Lemmy and Mickey thought they needed another guitarist, and Phil said, let me try it, and if it doesn't work out, I'll be the first to say. And Lemmy said, we tried 2 songs in rehearsal, we knew straight away it was great, it was fine. The only thing Phil said, he said, I knew I could no longer stand around on stage. I had to move. And then he did this thing, he was charging around all over the place. And it's cool, but I think he got a really bad rep for that before. Fucking, he wasn't that static. I mean, he's just a guy on stage playing his guitar, standing there. I don't know why he got so much shit for it. Maybe it's because Würzel was sort of always up front and pointing his guitar at the crowds and stuff. But Phil Campbell wasn't exactly hiding in the shadow of his head down. He'd move around a bit. He'd just play, walk around. I don't know why he got such grief for that. But he seemed to invite strong opinions, sort of, Phil Campbell. I think because he was so confident in himself and stuff, he seemed to rub people up the wrong way, sort of thing. But his sterling job of Motörhead afterwards and right to the end, rest in peace all of you, rest in peace Phil, recently passed away. But I mean, I always straight away when Overnight Sensation came out, I didn't know so much about the personnel then. It was 96, I was like 20. I'd only been Motörhead for about a year and a half. But the difference between that and Sacrifice, I mean, Sacrifice just, that was the 2 guitars, just sort of do all that sort of, war for war and all so. I've never liked all that sort of stuff. I always found Lemmy's lyrics got really lazy and that sort of thing, but you could tell, or I could tell anyway, Overnight Sensation came out, it was fresh, it was new, it was different, they had this shake-up change, and Lemmy writes when he was inspired, he wrote these fantastic lyrics. You could tell. That's what I always say when he did this, when he was teaming up with that bloody Dave Grohl. It's just, anyway, that's another thing, but those projects he did, and, then he defaults back to this, looking for some action in your miserable life type. He had these sort of set lyrics that when he just wasn't feeling it, I think. That's my interpretation, but straight off Overnight Sensation, the three-member lineup, brilliant songs and really diverse. Crazy, like a civil war, really heavy as hell, and then Listen to Your Heart, brilliant. And Listen to Your Heart is like a sort of, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a heavy folk song. It's just brilliant. I really love that album. Really clever. Really all out. Really. But apparently they had their massive arguments then, and Mickey D left the group for 3 hours or something. But yeah, Phil really came into his own, and then it was right to the end. he kept it going. I think it's when really Lemmy really started to appreciate Phil Campbell. He could lean on him, and Phil was right there. He was steady as a rock, you know. And him and Mickey D, you know, Lemmy had some really two tight, tough guys, you know, to keep the thing going right. It was going to keep going right to the end, and it did keep going till the end. The three guitar lineup, and Phil Campbell's playing, as far as I was, just got better and better and better. He was playing every night, practicing a lot, and yeah, just it really, really worked. I think maybe the full guitar lineup had its era by then anyway. I mean, I do think it's tits on the ball for a lot of stuff in Motörhead. To have two guitars as well, it's got way too much, especially when they weren't playing, when there's four of them, they were playing in places where they weren't so popular, like a lot of America. See, if you them in the mid-90s, and they'd be on these tiny stages, four of them. Fuck, the noise must have just been. I mean, I know they're loud band that, but you might, if you remember, you think, oh God, do I have to do this to myself? You know, I'm just gonna just permanently bugger my hearing forever. You know, maybe you got them, and still, if it's Motörhead, maybe 3 or 4 don't make no difference, but you got more space anyway. Yeah, so just kept going right to the end with Phil Campbell. Anyway, yeah, that's a better take I did before. I think he said modestly, but that kind of ends that was the 2 guitar lineup of Motörhead. Cheers.